What do you think when you see a Woody? I see a nice support for the team, or the ultimate do-it-yourself character. He has all the tools for many of the jobs you come across in the game. Need to move fast? He's got you covered. Not only for himself, but also for the team. Need some quick resources? Just a quick chop or a slam here and you're good. Caught without a weapon? No worries, you are the weapon. Woody really has it all. He has got to be one of the best characters within the game. Woody is fun. He is one of my favorite characters because he does everything I want to do, which is gather resources and explore. Plus, he also just has the ability to quickly mass farm mobs. Not many players have access to this, and this is what makes Woody higher on my list. But what is it that really makes Woody so great? Well, I think it's part of how nuanced he is, and how his kit interacts with the world. On his own, Woody is just a basic character with basic stats and basic powers. First, he has Lucy. People say Bernie or Abigail are loud and annoying, but Lucy just gets to me. Especially when you have her in a backpack. She just won't be quiet. Lucy is Woody's first power. With her, he is able to chop trees with twice the speed and efficiency. It is nice early on because you're able to quickly build up other items with Lucy and have a big early game boost. Woody also has built-in winter insulation. It's actually really nice, even though it's only like an extra minute of warmth that you get. Woody can also befriend creatures for longer. He doesn't have a bonus to befriending. Items will give the same amount of time for each befriend attempt, but Woody's fellowships have a 25% longer max time. Normally, allied followers can only last up to 20 minutes, while Woody can have them last up to 24 minutes. You just need to give that extra food to gain the bonus time. And finally, Woody has a 50% higher chance to spawn tree guards, 1.95% chance of spawning evergreens, and birch trees follow this chart here based on the day count and on the season. During the second year of fall, poison birch trees have a 25% chance to spawn whenever they are chopped as Woody, which is just crazy to think about. That is Woody's base kit, and you can upgrade him more thanks to the new skill trees. One of the favorite perks I have for him is definitely the faster harvesting tree. Each point lowers the time it takes to harvest by 10%, where the third makes it 33% faster. A regular player takes about a second from each harvest, and Woody can do it in about half a second. People think that this skill is not really that worth it because it doesn't really save you that much time. But I think it's just more of a quality of life type of skill. You notice the difference in speed, especially when you're harvesting a bunch of items. Woody ends up saving so much time that is just unavoidable to lose in the early game. Putting points into this part of the skill tree will save you an immense amount of time. So much so you may even feel sad playing another character with how slowly they harvest. His crafting trees are great for support. Refining boards for cheaper, making hardwood hats, and also the walking stick. These skills are really great in a group setting. Giving free early game speed and armor is always a positive. But the only sad part is that these items really lose their effectiveness beyond the early game. The walking stick is a 15% movement buff for 32 minutes, and the hard hat is a 70% armor with 270 durability, with the ability to also ignore damage from earthquakes. But you can have fun being able to quickly armor up whenever you need. The next skill tree is the one that you see a lot in videos, usually those of having a bunch of tree guards killing bosses. The tree feller part of his skill tree is interesting because it allows you to counter Woody's bonus tree guard chance by doing double damage to them. Having this fully maxed out also lets you potentially use tree guards as minions for fights, especially for those fights that have a boss that can chop trees. But any bosses that have AoE also work. Yeah, I've seen these videos before, but what's interesting is trying this with birch trees, because birch trees also get transformed. Birch guardians can't get killed unless they are chopped, so theoretically they are much better at fighting certain bosses because they will endlessly spawn tentacles and birch nuts. The only sad part is that they won't attack creatures that are considered flying, and they only last 8 minutes. The tree guard skills really are one of his better choices, if not for the army, but just for being able to mass farm living logs. And now finally the part where everyone plays Woody for, his transformations. Beaver, Moose, and Goose. These are the main things people talk about when Woody is brought up in conversation. I really wonder why. Each of Woody's forms are simple and each are tied to a specific task. All war forms also have 240 insulation for both winter and summer, and also 50% wetness reduction. Beaver is your multi-tool. He can do nearly everything. Chop, mine, digger, hammer, you name it. He is also 10% faster than a normal player. Pointless if you got the walking stick perk, but still interesting nonetheless. Beaver can also fight if need be. Beaver does 27 damage, and also has a 25% damage reduction. It's not really something you should rely on, but it's kinda nice to have. Beaver also has a unique damage bonus against wood. Beaver does 50% more damage against wood types. This affects only tree guards, and also in PvP where log suits take extra damage. Unfortunately, this bonus damage is only additive, making Tree Feller do 71 damage in total. More than you would with a spear, but you would normally never encounter this because Beaver doesn't spawn tree guards. It's still something I found interesting. Beaver's skills increases effectiveness in chopping and mining. The mining skill increases the efficiency by 2.5 times. Normally it would take 11 hits to mine a boulder. The skill takes it down to 5. His chop boost lowers the amount of chops it takes to cut trees by 1. So small trees go from 2 to 1, medium trees go from 3 to 2, and large trees go from 4 to 3. The third upgrade allows Beaver to mine the late game ores without the need of a pick/axe. His mastery leads him to being able to ground pound slam with his tail, which does work on everything equal to 5 work for that object. You could also use this as an AoE attack, but there really is no place where you can use it without dying, since the attack radius is so small. It could also be used as a motor for boats, so long as you don't destroy the boat. The Beaver is really nice early on because you can clear up an entire biome of its resources and allocate it to your base for basically free. The only problem is spending all the time picking up all the resources, and eventually Bearger takes up this role. But Beaver still has its usefulness. As for combat, Moose does a better job. Moose is really nice early on as it's cheap to access. However, Moose is an interesting position. To most people, Weremoose has a huge monopoly on Woody's unique gameplay, especially his boss rushing. The Weremoose could be used for boss fighting, but only for really basic bosses. You're sacrificing the ability to use a bunch of items for whatever the Moose can offer. And without his skills, it's not really that much. Normally, Moose is just a character that has a 90% damage reduction, combat damage, and an AoE charge attack. He's also slower than a normal player. But with his skills, Moose gains higher movement speed, regen, an ability to control your charges, and slightly higher DPS. The first upgrade boosts the Moose walking speed up to normal player speed. This is so nice because you can dodge a lot more than what you used to. You also get reduced grogginess if you smash into an object. The original groggy timer is 10 seconds and this lowers it to 1.5. It starts counting when the impact is made, so grogginess is basically non-existent. The second upgrade gives Weremoose a passive regen which helps out so much more in combat. It's only 0.33 HP a second. It's not enough to have you be a heal tank without support, but having the constant heal helps out for longer fights where you're not taking much damage. Fights like Nightmare Werepig and Claws are ones that come to mind. The third upgrade allows you to control how long your charges last, so you can use it more for kiting and strategic horde control. And his mastery gives him an AoE slam of 136 damage, and also giving him some planar defense. I know I have seen some people do some really intense fights with just Moose, Bee Queen for one. However, I've always said that most of the things you see online are people that have put a lot of time into practicing these fights. So unless you really put the time in, you're going to end up using more resources using the Moose than you would as normal Woody. It's weird because unless you very specifically look to use Moose as much as possible, you kinda shouldn't. There's not many situations where going Moose is a better option than just using what you have at hand. One you should use as much as possible is actually Goose. Default Goose is kind of slow at 1.4 times speed, which is slightly faster than being on a road, but Goose is affected the most by the standard curse upgrades. Extending the duration of how long the player stays transformed allows the player to do a lot more map traversal than you normally would without them. The skill tree of the Goose is pretty bad. The first point is really good though, boosting the Goose's speed by 20%, giving the player about 10 speed, which is equal to a default or ornery beefalo with a standard saddle. You can boost this with roads too. The second upgrade makes Goose waterproof. Why would you need this? And it's not like you're getting wet when you run on top of water, so this only ever comes in handy if you happen to be running during a heavy rainstorm. The Goose's third skill is dodge an attack every 5 seconds. I guess this is just for people who are absent-mindedly running around with Goose and don't look at the screen. It allows for some forgiveness if the player gets hit, since the Goose has no protection. You could potentially use this with werepigs, as werepigs don't aggro onto Woody if he is transformed. Even if you attack them, they won't retaliate. But a thing you can do is gather a whole bunch of pigs, wait for a full moon, and have the enemy attack you while you're running around and the werepigs attack the enemy. Just something fun that exists only for Woody. The mastery for Goose is a telelocator staff on command. The randomness of the teleport is not really that good, so it's not really much to talk about. The standard curse upgrades are pretty good. Each one increases the duration for each form by 15%. And I think the Curse Embracer is just nice because being able to have the extra stats that you would otherwise lose by eating the totems is nice. Also having around 2.5 minutes from starving after transforming is nice as well. And then finally there are the affinities. I don't think they really are needed. Shadow Affinity only really helps if you're actively forcing long transformation times or are in situations where you are surrounded by creatures that will tank your sanity. And the Lunar Affinity is just protection from moonstorms and wayward wicker bottoms. In fact, the affinity perks are more beneficial for just getting the 10% damage and resistance you get from the affinities. The thing with Woody is that you hear a lot of criticism about each of his forms and how they compare to other characters or things that exist in the game. Maxed out Beaver sucks because Bearger exists in year 2. You could use Moose for certain fights, but then why not just use a cane, magi, road, staff, flutes, or weapons that you've already mass farmed. Goose Speed is the only one that could potentially have usage throughout the whole game, since you still will have the quick niche of walking on water until you get enough wood to make boat bridges and docks everywhere. Woody's kit seems to be only for early game power boosts and nothing else. But that's the wonderful thing about Woody. He's a character that doesn't play just one way. Some will try and tell you the meta of how you should play, but you should certainly take Woody for what he has to offer and find your own fun way to play him. He can be a support, helping the team reach new heights, or a solo monster being able to take on the biggest threats, or one of the best scouts in the early game. But even with all this, at his core, Woody will still always be the Lumberjack. Thanks for watching the Woody video. This character was in the works for a long time. I wanted to try and give him some justice because Woody is one of my favorite characters. I've always enjoyed him, what he has to offer, and I personally just like mass farming resources, and Woody allows me to do that easier than other characters. Maybe you'll be able to find fun in it too. Until next time, this has been Tara, and take care. With her, he is able to chop twee. With her, he is able to chop tweez. Twee!